Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Alex. I usually try to start these with something upbeat, a quick hello, but today's story requires a different kind of beginning. It requires a bit of a warning. This is a long one. It's not just a story about a bad day. It's a story about how a life, a future, an entire universe you've built with someone can be a beautiful, elaborate lie. We all have those memories, right? The ones that feel like polished stones in our minds. Smooth, perfect, glowing. The first kiss, the shared laughter that makes your sides ache, the quiet moments of perfect understanding. We hold on to them, build our foundations on them. But what happens when you find out that underneath that foundation, the ground was rotten from the start? What happens when you realize the person you love most was the one holding the shovel? So, get comfortable. This isn't a quick anecdote. This is a 5-year epic with a finale you won't see coming. If you're up for that journey and you want to hear more stories about navigating the wreckage and finding yourself again, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and the little bell. I promise you, the journey is worth it. It started, as so many things do, in college. A sprawling, anonymous lecture hall for a Sociology 101 class I was only taking to fill a credit. The room smelled of old paper, stale coffee, and the faint electric buzz of 100 bored students. I was late, of course. My alarm had failed me, and I'd sprinted across campus, my backpack thumping against my spine. I burst through the double doors, and 100 faces turned to look. Professor Albright, a man whose tweed jacket had tenure, paused mid-sentence and peered at me over his spectacles. "Nice of you to join us, Mr. Jensen," he droned. My face burned hot. I scanned the tiered rows for a seat, any seat, and I saw one, a single, solitary empty chair in the middle of a packed row, next to a girl with hair the color of autumn leaves. My journey to that seat was a comedy of errors. I tripped over a stray backpack strap, sending a textbook skittering across the floor. I mumbled 1,000 apologies as I squeezed past knees and laptops. When I finally collapsed into the chair, breathless and humiliated, she turned to me. She wasn't laughing like the others. She had this small, amused smile playing on her lips, her green eyes sparkling. "That was," she whispered, her voice a low, melodic hum, "the most dramatic entrance this class has seen all semester. I give it an 8 out of 10 for sheer chaos." I was instantly disarmed. "I was aiming for a 10, I whispered back, and she let out a soft laugh that was like music. That was Sarah. We talked for the rest of the lecture, ignoring Professor Albright's droning. We learned we were both English literature nerds at heart, that we shared a mutual love for a ridiculously obscure indie band from the 90s, and that we both believed pineapple on pizza was a crime against humanity. It was one of those rare, instant connections where you feel like you've known the person your whole life. Our first official date was a spectacular failure. I wanted to impress her, so I blew half my student loan payment on a dinner at a stuffy French restaurant. I was a nervous wreck. My hands were clammy. I could barely follow the conversation, and in a moment of pure, unadulterated clumsiness, I knocked a full glass of Merlot directly onto her pristine white blouse. I froze. My life flashed before my eyes. This beautiful, witty, incredible girl was going to think I was a complete buffoon. I started stammering apologies, trying to dab at the spreading stain with my napkin, only making it worse. But Sarah just looked down at her ruined shirt, then back at me, and she started to laugh. A full, genuine, beautiful laugh. "Well," she said, dabbing at her chest with a grin, "I guess this means you owe me a new shirt and a second date, a much less clumsy one, hopefully." That was the moment I fell in love with her. Not in the dramatic movie screen way, but in the quiet, real way. The second date was a walk in the park with $2 store frisbees and cheap ice cream. It was perfect. We talked for hours, sitting on a bench as the sun went down, and I knew, with a certainty that scared me, that I wanted to have a million more days, just like this one with her. After graduation, we got our first apartment, a tiny third-floor walk-up with slanted floors, and a temperamental radiator. It was our palace. We spent a whole weekend painting the living room, a color we called optimistic yellow. We got paint on our clothes, in our hair, on the cat. We ended the day exhausted, sitting on the floor in the middle of the room, eating pizza out of the box, surrounded by our beautiful, messy life. Our friend group became intertwined. My best friend, Mark, a cynical engineer who claimed to be allergic to romance, adored her. "I don't get it, Alex," he'd say. "She's smart, funny, and she actually laughs at your jokes. It's deeply suspicious." Sarah's best friend, Chloe, became like a sister to me. We were a unit, the four of us. We had game nights, went on weekend camping trips, and supported each other through post-grad anxieties and career missteps. Sarah was my rock. When I was studying for my final certification exams for my architecture license, I was a mess of stress and coffee. She would make sure I ate. She'd quiz me with flashcards, and she'd drag me out for walks when she saw I was about to burn out. She had this incredible, intuitive empathy, and I was hers. When she got a nasty flu that knocked her out for a week, I was the one making her soup, bringing her tea, and reading to her from her favorite books until she fell asleep. We weren't just in love, we were partners. We were a team. The life we were building felt solid, real, and indestructible. My relationship with my father, Richard, was the one fractured piece of my life. My parents' divorce when I was 5 was acrimonious. My mom got me. My dad got his business. He was a ghost in my childhood, a signature on a birthday card with a $100 bill tucked inside, a voice on the phone from a hotel in another time zone. The gifts were lavish, but the absence was a chasm. He missed my high school graduation because of a can't-miss merger. I remember standing there in my cap and gown, scanning the crowd for a face that wasn't there. The pride of the day curdling into a familiar hollow ache. When I brought Sarah home to meet my mom, it was instant love. They were thick as thieves within minutes. Meeting my father was different. It was a formal, sterile affair at one of his expensive country clubs. Richard was polished, charming, and distant. He shook my hand, gave Sarah a clinical up and down, and talked mostly about the stock market. But Sarah, with her infinite grace, worked her magic. She asked him about his business, not in a fawning way, but with genuine, intelligent curiosity. She found a book on his shelf about modern art, a passion of his, and started a conversation that, for the first time, made him look at someone other than a subordinate or a client. He was impressed. Over the next couple of years, Richard started showing up. It began slowly, an invitation to brunch, a call to see how we were doing. He was still awkward with me, our conversations stilted and full of long silences. But with Sarah, he was different. He lit up. He'd bring her small, thoughtful gifts, a rare art book, a scarf from one of his trips to Italy. I was thrilled. I saw it as a bridge. He was finally trying, finally making an effort to be a part of my life, and Sarah was the catalyst. "He adores you," I'd tell her, beaming. "He's just so much better when you're around." She would just smile and say, "He's not so bad, Alex. He's just lonely." The red flags were there, of course. They are always there in hindsight, aren't they? They were just so small, so easy to explain away. There was the time at my 25th birthday dinner. I was telling a story, and I noticed Richard wasn't listening to me. He was looking at Sarah, a strange, intense look on his face. When she laughed at something I said, his eyes followed the curve of her smile with an expression that wasn't paternal. Or the time Mark, after a family barbecue, pulled me aside. "Dude," he said, lowering his voice, "is it just me, or is your dad a little weird with Sarah?" I got defensive immediately. "What do you mean, weird?" "I don't know, man. The way he touches her arm when he talks to her. He complimented her dress like 5 times. It's just a little too much." "He's just being friendly, Mark," I snapped. "He finally has a daughter figure. Don't make it weird." I was willfully blind. I wanted this happy, blended family so badly that I refused to see the rot starting to creep in at the edges. I was building our future on a fault line and calling it solid ground. The proposal was my masterpiece, the culmination of 4 years of love. I worked overtime for 6 months, hoarding every spare dollar. The secret was a living thing, a ball of nervous energy in my chest. Telling Sarah we were going to Paris was a joy in itself. Her eyes went wide, and she let out a shriek of pure, unadulterated happiness that made all the extra hours worth it. Paris was a dream. We walked for miles, hand in hand, getting lost in cobblestone streets. We ate croissants that were so buttery they melted on the tongue. We kissed at the top of Montmartre, with the whole city sprawled out beneath us. On our last night, I took her to the Eiffel Tower. My heart was a drum solo against my ribs. The ring, a simple, elegant piece we'd once admired in a shop window, felt like a lead weight in my pocket. As we stood on the observation deck, the city lights twinkling like a fallen constellation, I turned to her. "Sarah," I began, my voice trembling. From the moment I tripped over that bag in sociology, 101, my life has been infinitely better. You took my clumsy, chaotic world and you made it beautiful. You're my best friend, my compass, my home. I don't want to spend a single day of the rest of my life without you. I got down on one knee, the cold metal of the deck pressing into my skin. I opened the box. The diamond caught the light, and so did the tears in her eyes. "Sarah Elizabeth Connolly," I said, "will you marry me?" She didn't speak. She just sobbed, a sound of overwhelming joy, and nodded furiously, throwing her arms around my neck. "Yes," she finally whispered into my ear. "Yes," 1,000,000 times. "Yes." We called our families from the hotel room, giddy with champagne and happiness. My mom screamed, her parents cried, and then we called Richard. "Dad, we have news," I said, unable to keep the grin out of my voice. "Let me guess," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "My son finally did the smart thing." I put the phone on speaker. "We're engaged," Sarah chirped. There was a pause. "Well, Sarah," he said, and his voice had a strange, velvety quality. "I'm not surprised. A woman of your caliber was never going to be on the market for long. He's a lucky man. A very, very lucky man. Congratulations. To you." It was a small thing, a subtle shift in emphasis. He was congratulating her, not us. At the time, I brushed it off as his typical awkwardness. In retrospect, it was a declaration. The year of wedding planning was where the small cracks began to spiderweb into gaping fissures. It started with the budget. My parents and Sarah's had offered to contribute, but Richard swept in with an offer that dwarfed everyone else's. "I want you two to have the best," he announced over dinner. "Don't worry about a thing. This is my gift to you." But his gift came with strings, thick, heavy, invisible ropes, the charming little vineyard we wanted. "Not secure enough," Richard declared. He'd found a much better venue, a cavernous, opulent ballroom at his country club, the intimate guest list we'd curated. He added 50 of his business associates. "It's good for your career, Alex. Networking." I fought back. "Dad, this is our wedding, not a corporate mixer." "Alexander, don't be naive," he'd say, his tone sharp. "I'm paying for this. You'll thank me later." The worst part was Sarah. She sided with him. "Alex, he's being so generous," she'd say, in a placating tone when we were alone. "It's a beautiful ballroom, and what's the harm in a few extra guests? Maybe we should just be grateful." It was our first real, prolonged fight. It felt like he was buying her allegiance, and she was selling it for a fancier wedding. The optimistic yellow of our apartment started to feel sickly and pale. The uncomfortable moments escalated. One afternoon, I came home early to find Richard's Mercedes in our parking spot. I walked in, and he and Sarah were sitting at our kitchen table, heads close together, looking over fabric swatches. They looked up, startled, like teenagers caught smoking. "Dad, what are you doing here?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "Sarah called me," he said smoothly, standing up. "She was stressed about the floral arrangements, and I was in the neighborhood, just offering a second opinion. I was just overwhelmed," Sarah added quickly, not quite meeting my eyes. It was sweet of him to stop by. It felt wrong, the two of them in our sanctuary, making decisions about our wedding without me. Another time, I picked up Sarah's phone to use its calculator and saw a chain of texts between them. They were full of inside jokes I didn't understand and laughing emojis. One from him read, "Our little secret." "What's this?" I asked, holding up the phone. She snatched it back, her face flushing. "Oh, it's nothing. He found a place that has the specific type of champagne I wanted for the toast. I told him not to tell you, so it would be a surprise." Her excuses were always plausible, so plausible that I felt guilty for doubting her. I was the one being paranoid, jealous. I was the one making things weird, just like Mark said. So I buried my suspicions. I buried them deep because the alternative was unthinkable. The alternative was that the two people I loved most in the world were betraying me in the most profound way imaginable. It was a Tuesday, 3 days before the wedding. The final suit fitting had finished early, and I was buzzing with that pre-wedding energy, a mix of sheer terror and giddy excitement. I decided to go home and surprise Sarah. I stopped and bought a bottle of Veuve Clicquot, the expensive stuff, and a bouquet of white lilies, her favorite. I remember walking up the 3 flights of stairs to our apartment, taking them 2 at a time. I could already picture her face, the way she'd light up when I walked in. I put my key in the lock and turned it as quietly as I could. The apartment was silent, eerily so. "Sarah?" I called out, my voice echoing slightly in the hallway. No answer. I smiled to myself. She must be napping. Perfect. I tiptoed down the hall toward our bedroom. The door was closed, but not fully latched. It was open just a crack. As I got closer, I heard a sound, a low murmur. I stopped, my hand hovering over the doorknob. My first thought was that she was on the phone, but then I heard a second voice, a man's voice, a deep, familiar laugh that sent a spike of ice-cold dread through my veins. It was my father's laugh. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. He's dropping something off. They're planning a surprise for me. Don't be crazy. But my body knew better. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My breath caught in my throat. I pushed the door open. The world didn't just stop. It shattered into a million silent, screaming pieces. The lily slipped from my grasp, scattering across the floor. The champagne bottle hit the hardwood with a sickening crash, an explosion of glass and foam that was a pale imitation of the one happening inside my soul. They were in our bed, the bed where we slept, where we dreamed, where we had built our life. My fiancée and my father. The moment stretched into a horrifying eternity. They hadn't heard me over their own activities. It was the sound of the bottle smashing that made them freeze. Sarah's head whipped around, her eyes wide with a terror I had never seen. My father, Richard, he looked at me, and for a split second, there was no guilt, no shame. There was just annoyance at being caught. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. A sound tried to escape my throat, a primal scream of agony, but it died before it could form. I just backed away, slowly at first, then I turned and fled. I ran out of the apartment, down the stairs, and into the street. I didn't stop running until the stitch in my side was a searing flame and my lungs were on fire. I don't remember driving. I just remember the blur of streetlights, the smear of colors through a haze of tears. I didn't realize I was crying. I ended up at a place I hadn't been to in years, a grimy roadside motel called the Starlight Inn, a place whose stars had burned out decades ago. The room smelled of bleach and despair. The peeling wallpaper and stained brown carpet were a perfect reflection of my insides. I sat on the edge of the lumpy bed, the buzzing of the neon sign outside the only sound. And then the dam broke. It wasn't just tears. It was a guttural, soul-tearing grief that ripped through me, leaving me hollowed out and shaking. My phone started to buzz. A text from Sarah. "Alex, please, we need to talk. It's not what you think. It's not what you think." The audacity of it. Then a call from my father. I stared at the screen, at the picture of him and me from a rare, happy memory. A fishing trip when I was 10. I let it go to voicemail. The messages kept coming. A relentless assault. "Alex, I am so sorry. I love you. Son, please call me. We can fix this. Alex, don't do anything stupid. Please, just come home." And with every message, the grief began to cool, to harden. It crystallized into something else. Something cold, sharp, and heavy. It was rage. A pure, unadulterated fury that was terrifying in its clarity. They weren't sorry they did it. They were sorry they got caught. They thought they could fix this. They thought they could manage my pain, smooth it over with empty apologies and lies, and still get their happy ending. I scrolled back through my photos, through 5 years of memories. Us in Paris, us painting the apartment, us with our friends, with our families. It was all a lie, a carefully constructed illusion. And in that moment, sitting in that filthy motel room, I knew I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I wasn't going to just cancel the wedding and crawl away to die. Number, the wedding was still on. The show would go on, but it would be my show, my script, and my ending. The next 48 hours were an out-of-body experience. I was a ghost, piloting my own body. I needed a plan. I needed proof. My word against theirs wouldn't be enough. They would paint me as hysterical, as a jilted lover making things up. The next morning, I called Sarah. My voice was eerily calm. "I'm at a hotel," I said, the words tasting like ash. "I need to think." The relief in her voice was sickening. "Oh, Alex, thank God. I've been so worried. I can explain everything." "Don't," I said, my voice hard as steel. "Don't say another word. Not yet. I will see you at the altar. We will talk after." Then I called my father. "Don't ever call me son again," I told him. "You will play your part. You will be the best man. You will stand up there and you will smile. And after, you and I will be done." They agreed. They were so desperate to salvage the situation, to keep the lid on their sordid secret, that they agreed to my insane terms. They thought I was just hurt, that I would come around. They underestimated me. They had no idea I wasn't trying to salvage anything. I was planting dynamite. I called my best man, Mark. "Mark, I need a favor, a massive one. Don't ask questions." I had him go to my apartment to pick up my suit, and while he was there, I had him retrieve a small, high-fidelity audio recorder from my desk drawer, a gadget I used for my architecture work to record client meetings. Then came the hardest part. I arranged a meeting with both of them at a neutral location, a sterile coffee shop halfway between my motel and their world of lies. I told them I needed to hear it from them, that I needed to understand before I could even consider moving forward. I sat there, my phone in my pocket, the recorder app running, and I listened. I listened as they spun their web of excuses. It wasn't planned. It just happened. They had a connection they couldn't deny. They were going to tell me, they swore, right after the wedding, after the honeymoon. They didn't want to ruin our special day. My father had the gall to say, "Alex, I know you're hurt, but I've been lonely for a long time. And Sarah, she sees me. She understands me in a way no one else does." And Sarah, my Sarah, cried and said, "I love you, Alex. I always will. But what your father and I have, it's different. It's this overwhelming force. I didn't know how to stop it. I recorded every self-serving, pathetic, soul-destroying word. It was my insurance policy. It was my weapon. I left that coffee shop with a polite nod, leaving them sitting there, drenched in their own deceit, but hopeful, thinking they had a chance. The performance of my life. I woke up on my wedding day in that cheap motel room. The sun was streaming through the grimy window. It was a beautiful day to burn a world to the ground. I showered. I shaved. I put on the ridiculously expensive tuxedo that Richard had insisted on. Each piece of the clothing felt like a costume, armor for the battle ahead. Mark picked me up. He took one look at my face, and his usual sarcastic demeanor vanished. "Alex, what is going on? You look like you're heading to a funeral, not your own wedding." "In a way, I am," I said, my voice flat. "Just trust me, Mark. Whatever happens today, just have my back." He stared at me, his eyes full of worry, but he just nodded. The drive to the church was surreal. We passed billboards, families walking their dogs, life going on as normal, while I was sitting on a nuclear bomb. I felt strangely calm. The rage had solidified into a cold, hard purpose. Walking into that church was like stepping onto a stage. It was packed, hundreds of smiling faces, all there to celebrate a lie. I saw my mother in the front row, her eyes shining with pride. It was a dagger in my heart. This was going to destroy her. I took my place at the altar, and then my father, Richard, clapped me on the shoulder. "Ready, son," he whispered, a conspiratorial smile on his face. I just looked at him, my expression blank. The organ music swelled. The doors at the back of the church opened, and there she was, Sarah, a vision in white lace and silk. She was breathtaking. For a horrifying, treacherous second, my heart ached with what I was losing, with the memory of the girl I fell in love with. But then I saw her eyes find my father's for a fleeting moment, a tiny shared glance of relief and conspiracy, and the ice formed in my veins again. She glided down the aisle, her smile radiant. She took my hand at the altar. Her hand was ice cold. "I love you," she mouthed. I felt nothing. The ceremony began. The officiant's words about love, honor, and fidelity washed over me, a meaningless drone. And then it was time for the vows. Sarah went first. She pulled out a small, handwritten card and began to speak, her voice thick with fake emotion. "Alex, my love, my best friend," she began. "From the first day we met, you have been my anchor and my wings. You showed me what it means to be truly loved, to be truly seen. I promise to honor you, to cherish you, to build a life with you that is filled with laughter and joy. I promise to be your partner in all things for all of my days." The crowd sighed. My mother wept openly. It was a masterpiece of deception. Then all eyes turned to me. The officiant smiled. "Alex, your vows?" I took a deep breath. I looked at Sarah, at my father, at the expectant faces in the crowd. "I do have a few words," I said, my voice ringing out, louder and clearer than anyone expected. The officiant looked taken aback. "I'm afraid I can't marry Sarah today," I announced. A collective gasp rippled through the church. Because true love is about honesty and trust, and I learned a few days ago that our entire relationship, our entire future, has been built on a foundation of lies. I looked directly at Sarah, whose face had gone from radiant to ghost white. "I can't marry her," I said, my voice dropping to a deadly quiet, "because she has been sleeping with my father." Pandemonium. It wasn't just a gasp. It was a sonic boom of shock and horror. Sarah's mother let out a strangled cry. Sarah just stood there, swaying, her face a mask of utter disbelief. My father looked like he'd been shot, but I wasn't finished. "I know," I continued, my voice rising over the growing din, "that some of you will find this hard to believe. You will think I am a cruel, jilted groom. So, I brought proof." I pulled my phone from my pocket. I had already arranged with the wedding DJ to have a small auxiliary cable ready at the lectern under the guise of playing a surprise song for Sarah. In one smooth motion, I plugged it in. The church's state-of-the-art sound system, meant for organ music and prayers, came to life, and I played the recording. My father's voice filled the sacred space. I've been lonely for a long time, and Sarah, she sees me. Then Sarah's voice, crying, I love you, Alex. But what your father and I have, it's this overwhelming force. Every pathetic excuse, every self-serving justification, every drop of their poison echoed off the vaulted ceilings. The guests were frozen, their faces a gallery of disgust and shock. Sarah's father, a big stoic man, let out a roar of rage and started moving toward my dad. Mark and my other groomsmen intercepted him. Sarah finally crumpled, her beautiful white dress pooling around her as she collapsed to the floor in a sobbing heap. I stood there for a moment, watching the fire I had started consume everything. I saw my mother's face, her pride shattered, replaced by a look of unimaginable pain and confusion. That was the only thing that gave me a pang of regret. Then I turned, and without a backward glance, I walked down the aisle, through the stunned crowd, out the heavy oak doors, and into the sunlight of my new, terrifying, and completely unwritten life. The aftermath was a blur of phone calls, legal meetings, and painful conversations. The wedding was, of course, cancelled. The story became a sordid legend in our town. I sold the apartment, unable to step foot in it again. I moved into a small, anonymous place across town. The first few months were the hardest. I was numb. I went to work. I came home. I ate. I slept. But I wasn't really living. I was a spectator in my own life. I started seeing a therapist, a kind woman who let me be angry and sad and broken without judgment. We unpacked everything, not just the betrayal, but my entire relationship with my father, my need for approval, my willful blindness to the red flags. Healing is not a straight line. It's a messy, looping, brutal process. There were days I felt fine, and days when the memory of what they did would hit me like a physical blow, leaving me breathless. I had to learn to trust again, starting with myself. I had to learn that their actions were a reflection of their own brokenness, not a judgment on my worth. I reconnected with friends, with hobbies I'd let slide. I started hiking, finding a strange solace in the quiet indifference of the mountains. I threw myself into my work, designing buildings that were strong, honest, and built on solid foundations. I haven't spoken to my father since that day, and I never will. He is dead to me. I heard through the grapevine that he and Sarah tried to make it work, but their relationship, born of deceit, crumbled under the weight of the scandal. She moved away. I don't know where she is, and I don't care to know. It's been a few years now. The scars are still there. They always will be, but they don't hurt anymore. They're just a part of my story, a reminder of the fire I walked through and survived. So that's the story. That's how my world ended and how I began to build a new one. The life lesson here is more complicated than just trust your gut. It's about learning that you can't control other people. You can't make them love you. You can't make them honest. The only thing you can control is how you react when they show you who they really are. You can let their betrayal define you and destroy you, or you can use it as fuel to burn down the lies and build something new and true in its place. I chose to build, and my new life is smaller, quieter, but it's real, and it's mine. Thank you for sticking with me through all of that. I know it was heavy, but sharing it, it helps. If you've ever been through something similar, or if you just want to follow my journey of rebuilding, I hope you'll subscribe. There's more to this life, and I'm looking forward to sharing the next chapter with you all. Until next time, be kind to yourselves and build your house on rock, not on sand.